Hey, and thanks for listening. This is Conversations, the True Voice Media podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Gibbard. Let's get started. So here we are. We're here with a man, a legend, named Marcus Nelson. That crowd is going wild, man. Crowd is going wild because they are so happy that he has graciously set aside a little bit of time to talk with us about some things here on the Social Media Philanthropy Podcast, Conversations Edition. Marcus, why don't you tell the people, all the people that are listening, the hundreds of millions of them, about yourself?
Oh, gosh. Thanks for putting me on the spot. Tell you about myself. So I was born at an early age. I don't really remember a whole lot. Some things happened. Also probably trying to put those out of my memory. But other than that, gosh, what do you want to know? I'm the founder and CEO of Advocate.com. That's 2 Ds, double D, advocate, like you're adding your advocates, right?
Smart.
Before that, I was the director of social media at a small startup called Salesforce.
I think I've heard of them.
Yeah, they did a couple things. And then before that, I started a company called User Voice. So I've done a couple startups. I think this is my fifth startup that actually seems to be doing okay.
So what you're saying is you've been around the block, sir. You have some experience. You have established credibility early on in this podcast episode.
Yes. I've been around the block, I suppose.
Rumor had it that you were also a former J. Crew model. Just saying.
It's a vicious rumor.
It's a vicious rumor.
Yes. I would not Google Flickr Marcus Nelson J. Crew.
I would not do that. I would not do that, everyone. I would not.
You wouldn't see hair.
Of course.
Actually, you would see lots of hair, but not anymore. No.
But that's by choice. You're rocking. You're rocking the clean shaven do. I think it's good.
I have this shiny object on my head now.
Fascinating. So, Marcus, you and I, we met first at Social Media Strategy Summit New York, and then we got the opportunity to hang out and get to know one another a little bit better at the Social Media Strategy Summit Dallas.
Yep.
And that includes an epic trip to have some barbecue. That's where we started out with the whole thing. And
went to Lockhart's.
Yeah, very
Lockhart's
good barbecue.
Smokehouse. Yeah.
I still very much appreciate that after getting off of the plane and the only thing I wanted to do in Dallas, the first thing I did was come meet you, and you had epic proportions of meat waiting for me, and I really do appreciate that.
Yeah, the portion size was not limited to a small young man from the Philadelphia area.
Yeah.
You could have probably fed 3 or 4 people, huh?
Yeah, there was a lot. So what was cool is that, you and I, we're in similar, our Venn diagrams overlap a little bit in our interests and knowledge. And what's awesome is that we got the opportunity to hang out and get to know one another better at these conferences, which leads me to the first thing I want to talk to you about, which is conferences in general. You get to speak at a bunch of them, as do I, thankfully. We get to attend a bunch of them. You get to go there and tell people about your kick-ass awesome software, which we will talk about a little bit. But here's a kind of blanket question. What's wrong with conferences? Because what it seems to me is that it's hard to – I don't think many conferences really nail it. I think there are pieces of it where I think the Social Media Strategy Summit is pretty damn good. But I think that overall it's really hard to just nail it, to knock it out of the park, because I think that it's difficult to make something that's actionable for a wide variety of people. I think it's difficult because the speakers are scared of giving away the secret sauce. And I think that there's just not enough targeting in how we invite people. But blanket statement, what's wrong with conferences?
What's wrong with conferences? I don't think anything's wrong with conferences. I think what's wrong is speakers don't realize that, I'd say 80% of their job is there to entertain the audience. Okay. I think what happens is we get caught up in trying to talk about what we do or why we do it instead of creating a relationship with our audiences. And so whenever you speak to an audience, I think I lifted this from a book I read. I think it was Guy Kawasaki, and he actually was the one that said, your job is to entertain the audience first. And then you can season it with information, because oftentimes what happens is when you're taking in lots of information, it's no different than when you're in college or in high school and you're taking notes and everyone's talking and your brain just kind of, gets frazzled. And when you're sitting in a conference, especially if you've seen speaker after speaker after speaker after speaker, your brain just starts kind of like checking out, and it's harder to retain. And then you end up, glaring at Facebook, and then Facebook takes them off a tangent. And then the speaker is just like, a teacher at, the Peanuts high school or Peanuts grade school, whatever it was. And it's wah, 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 wah. And people aren't paying attention anymore. You've lost them. So I think entertainment value is probably what's missing at conferences, and that's why some conferences do better at others. It's really about how do you get the right speakers in there that have the attitude that when they go in there, their first priority is to make it interesting and make it fun.
Interesting. So, do you think then that these sort of unconference formats help to alleviate some of that speaker after speaker after speaker monotony? Do you think that having the workshops on one day or creating more time in between for networking? Because I'll tell you, the thing I like best about these conferences is when the conference is over and we all go out for dinner and drinks and we get to know one another and we talk about things at that time, like real things, not prep, not canned, not on slides, but we just start talking about stuff. Do you think there's some magic formula of conference maybe that exists that we're just not doing yet, where you have the time, almost like a retreat that's real targeted, you got the right people there, they're all in the same industry, so you can speak very confidently about a particular topic, you have enough time to network, you have the format correct so that there's time in between to let the brain breathe a little bit.
Yeah.
Do you think there's something like that exists that we should put together and maybe profit from?
No, I don't. Best conference that I've been to so far that I think is really, really close, if not there, is I went to the Dent conference in Sun Valley, Idaho. That was last March. And I think what was interesting about that conference is that they insisted that attendees come a day early and leave a day late. And what I thought was, at first, kind of like, oh, this is a time suck, what am I doing? I quickly turned into this, grabbing a bunch of people that you didn't know and running out and grabbing lunch or grabbing coffee. Or they had events where you could go skiing, or you could go hang out in this massive hot tub that was like 60 feet across and 8 feet deep. And it was just 104 degrees out in the outdoors, where it's 32 degrees and there's an outside bar and they bring you pina coladas or ice water or whatever it is you fancy. And what that did was it really kind of juxtaposed this idea of like getting off the plane, getting your hotel, unpacking, finishing your deck, going to bed, and wake up in the morning and just like hit it, And it really gave you an opportunity to actually create relationships with people. Something that I just recently started at conferences is that before I go to the conference, I create a little Twitter list, and I go and find everybody that I can that's already said that they're going, or that I can find on the website or whatever, and I start adding them to a Twitter list. Mm-hmm. And what that does is it, first of all, indicates to everyone, they get a little notification, hey, you've been invited, you've been added to this Twitter list. And then what I tried to do, like I did with you, I reached out and I said, hey guys, I'm organizing, we're going to go to this dinner, and just come and join us, right? Open invitation. And the nice thing about that is that everybody needs to eat. I mean, it's not a big, difficult thing. And so if they're going to be there, they're going to eat something. And they might as well eat something with you. And that's what we did. And, you showed up, and we had a couple other guys showed up. We had a great time. Yeah. It just so happened the chef was a friend of mine and comped the whole thing. But, that's not going to happen every time.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
so maybe we need more of that. Maybe we need more encouragement of people to stop looking at conferences as this destination that we go to and we try to absorb the knowledge of the speaker, whether they're effective at it or not. And we start thinking of it more as a place to go and start building relationships, but not like a networking event. I'm making air quotes for those that can't see, obviously. But rather than making it this, stuffy, collect this many business cards and write on the back of it, but instead actually like focus on, hey, can I meet someone and actually hit it off with them and potentially have a friend?
Yeah, and I would agree with that statement. It's that the conference should be more about the engagement and creation of relationships. We have this thing called social media, and we've all been, social media, Twitter, Facebook, whatever, all day long. And it takes it to a whole different level when you can actually take those relationships online, take them offline. I remember a lunch that I went to a long time ago at a conference, just really spontaneously. We were just standing in the hall, and we just said, I'm hungry, I'm going to go eat. And it was just this restaurant connected to the event. And those people that I went and had lunch with, I still keep in touch with to this day. And it wasn't like this sort of like intentional thing. I didn't like seek them out. They didn't seek me out. We were all just standing here. I'm going to eat. You're going to eat. Let's go eat. And we went. And I think that's where friendships are forged and relationships. I mean, this business is crazy. We have all of these kind of virtual things that are happening all the time. But we're people, and people need real contact. And taking the virtual and making it real is important.
Yeah.
I think oftentimes we overlook that. We go to conferences, we get the program, we plan our life, we go to the sessions, we do everything, and then we run to our room, we change, we freshen up, and then we come back and we hit more sessions, and then we go to the cocktail parties, and we're constantly like business carding it up. And I realize that that's part of it, and there's phases in our lives where we have to be like that. But at the end of the day, it's a people thing, and we all matter, and we all have stories to share, and it's when we stop the kind of professionalism, as we call it, and be human, that all of a sudden magical things start happening.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, so much of what I do with social media and what I encourage my clients to do is to, use it to get out to lunch or a happy hour or dinner or something like that. Go actually engage with someone, get offline. The best thing you can do with social media or online is to get people offline, I think.
Right. Right.
But so kind of just rolling with that point of this, the relationships and how valuable they can be and how important they can be to any sort of business that you're killing me, buddy. But so here's where I want to go with it, because, Advocate is this social business platform, empowers employees to share on behalf of the company, to share content from their colleagues, et cetera. And it allows for numerous touch points in a way that no company branded logo account could ever get, because you get so many more touch points, right? Excellent thing. Yeah. So what the hell is wrong with companies and their lack of ability to trust in their employees? Because you would look at it and say, okay, well, now we have these, so prior to social media, people could have said whatever they wanted about the company. Right. Now, all of a sudden, because we have a platform, companies are like, oh, my God, nobody say anything. Don't say a thing. Just stay in your cubicle. Everything's
batten down the hatches.
Yeah. But you know what? Retention rates are going down. The workforce is changing. It's getting younger. Employees that are coming in have vastly different behaviors than the people that are currently, on their way out. And still, we have businesses that are just struggling to trust and instead are looking at their employees as a threat. So because this is your business, this is what you're doing from a technology perspective, me from a more consultative perspective, how do you deal with that? How do you make sense of the fact that you're trying to put together a program that allows companies to do this, but at the same time they're running for the hills?
Right. It's a culture issue. It's absolutely a culture issue. And when we talk to companies, some companies you talk to, their policy is basically, unless you've been blessed by PR, you cannot even say that you work for the company, right? And there's other companies that are just like, go, 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 just, message. And I think it's this culture that's been developed over the years where brands that have been around have this concept that it's up to them to control the message. And the problem is they don't control the message anymore. People who control your message are your customers, your employees, the people who talk about you. The fact that you can go to Glassdoor and see what employees are saying about their employer. You can get down to the brass tacks of how the real story is. That's pretty interesting. That paradigm didn't exist 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so employees are finding new ways to express themselves. There's a statistic that we found that over 70% of employees don't talk about their employers, mostly because they don't want to say the wrong thing, or they don't want to say, or they don't know what to say, or they don't want to say the wrong thing, so they say nothing at all. And that's a tragedy. I think if you like the place that you work and you like the projects you're working on, you should be able to talk about it, as long as you're not publicly traded company. It's not going to affect financials and stuff like that. The challenge for brands becomes, instead of telling employees what not to do, which is often how policies get written, don't do this, don't do that. What they need to do is start showing people what they do want them to do, exemplify the behavior, or point out employees that are doing the correct behavior so that it becomes an example of how they want other employees to behave. And then add to that is when there's things that the brand wants to talk about or it's okay to talk about, you have to communicate that back to your employees to let them know, hey, this is okay. This is totally great. Just go for it. Here's a great message. And when I worked at Salesforce, what we ended up doing is from the PR department, we just did these email blasts and said, hey, tweet this or Facebook this, or post this on your LinkedIn. And the thing about that, and this is actually where Advocate got born, is that you can only send emails so many times before it becomes a little bit, oh man, here comes another email from Marcus. And it just interrupts people's day. Mm-hmm. People don't need more email. And
are you sure?
Are you sure? Yes. People don't need more emails. And on top of that, even if you did send them an email, do they take action on that email? Do you know? I have no idea. And how do you track that and report, did we get anything out of this? I never had a way to do that. I didn't know which employees represent us on social. I didn't know which ones were taking actions on the content we were creating. And I didn't know if that content actually created an activity that generated some sort of return on investment on behalf of the brand. So that's where Advocate was born. This idea that if you're going to suggest content for employees and they're going to take action, let's track that and then celebrate all of the big wins that happen out of it. If Jeff goes and does a tweet and 12 people come to this big conference on behalf of the company, we should all celebrate that. We should be like, hey, Jeff got 12 people to come. This is awesome. And things like that first of all, make social meaningful. Two, it validates the employee so that the employee feels vested as well as appreciated. And validation goes a long way with employee loyalty. If the company can validate the efforts of the employee feels like this company cares about me. And if the company does care about them, they're going to be less likely to go job hunting at the blink of some little trouble. They're going to be more inclined to create better product. They're going to be more inclined to contribute because they're going to feel more invested. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the disconnect, is not giving employees the opportunity to get involved.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. I think what I find so interesting about this, and obviously, like, we're believers, right? Like we think our employees are freaking awesome, and we think if we empower them and we appreciate them, acknowledge them, it's only going to benefit us, right? We believe that. We're also not in particularly highly regulated industries, but even in the highly regulated industries, if you create this kind of culture of here's the governance, here's the sandbox you can play in, we encourage you to do it, let's acknowledge you, I feel like it can work there. But we are believers, right?
Yeah.
What I find fascinating is that there is data to support this. There are anecdotes to support this. And you're building a piece of software in which you will very clearly be able to show data to support that building in game mechanics and acknowledging employees and all the things that you're doing is effective. Yet I still find that as I'm having this conversation about social business, in most cases, it is so foreign. I mean, you look at something like the Edelman Trust Barometer, which came up so much at Social Media Strategies Summit Dallas, and even a few times in Boston. But that report kept coming up that people trust people like them. They trust normal employees inside the company, all this stuff. And yet, again, we're still, how far off are we is my question. How far away are we before all of the data, before all of the anecdotes, all of the things that are currently happening that show that it is a very clear case that, if you look at it from the perspective of your mind, if you look at it from the perspective of your wallet, the perspective of your heart, you know that this is the right way to go. How far off are we, in your opinion?
I think we're still a year away, maybe 2 years. What we're talking about is culture change. And culture change doesn't happen overnight. The reason why companies embraced email was not because email was the most ubiquitous way of creating communication and collaboration in a company. It was because someone created Microsoft Exchange and tools like that so that you could manage the email, so that you could understand who was doing what and create audit trails of what kind of information was going out and tie that communication to some sense of a audit trail or some sort of meaningful process. And once the company felt like they could control that and measure it, then it was opened up to everyone. Same thing with instant message. When instant messages came on board in the 90s, it was really taboo. You weren't allowed to do it. Well, then at some point they would, especially highly regulatory spaces, would actually monitor those conversations and ensure that they weren't violating any SEC rules or saying or expressing any secrets about the company. And so there was a process put in place for that. And same thing with social media. As social media is going into that same vein. You saw a bunch of companies come out early on were becoming police forces and measuring what people were saying and then alerting you if somebody said the wrong thing. And I think, I understand that has to happen in certain industries, but I think what that did is that kind of alienated the employees because now all of a sudden they felt like, they couldn't express themselves, and that's not what social media is supposed to be about. So I think this next wave of tools, again, it goes back to culture of process, is how do you create a process of enabling your employees to represent you on social media? And that's where I feel like Advocate and other tools like us that are coming out are going to be able to change culture in that now we're giving workflow, we're giving process, we're giving approvals, we're giving tools that enable your employees to represent your brand, but there's still this sense of being able to create a consistent message. There's still this sense of being able to react if something goes sideways. There's still this sense of being able to kind of build brand awareness. And those things tie in very closely with, initiatives in marketing or initiatives in internal comms. So once there's process in place, companies are much more apt to be able to embrace the technology and let these things happen. But again, it boils down to process. We're almost there. And I think companies are starting to waken up that we need to do something. Mm-hmm. We just won't do anything until we know how it could be done and should be done.
Gotcha. So as far as spurring adoption, it sounds a little bit like you think it's more just a matter of time and process than anything else. One thing that I would throw out there that I think is just an interesting variable, you had mentioned email, and sort of that, I think that kind of represents like the, obviously the early days of internet and how that has impacted company cultures and et cetera. But email, what's interesting about that versus what we're looking at now and how the internet looks now is that email is standardized to a certain extent, that you can send from Hotmail to Gmail to Yahoo to a Microsoft Exchange, whatever. And I think one of the things that I'm seeing that's particularly frustrating from a consultative standpoint is that each system that you look at in a social setting is different from the next and leverages a different set of APIs for a different set of networks and a different set of tools and a different format. And it's just gotten so incredibly varied that it's not like if you move from one platform to another that the changing costs are small. Changing from an Exchange server to Gmail at this point is nothing, and you're still going to be able to send and receive email. Your network administrator is probably going to be able to handle it. But switching from, say, I don't know, MailChimp to Aweber is going to be fairly challenging, I think, for some people. Switching from Twitter to Facebook, totally different. Switching from Sysomos to UberView or BrandWatch. All of these, they all have their own thing, and they all bring different features. There's no, like, mail, calendar, task, like Outlook. So do you think that we're going to need to standardize things to a certain extent to be able to get the scale that email got, or do you think that we're just the Wild West now and the Wild West is going to be okay?
Well, that's a really good question. I don't know that standardization is necessarily the right word.
Interoperability?
Interoperability is probably a better word. Is we're going to see that. Well, I believe the way it's going to happen is that you're going to see it in a very similar way that other tools have happened, where over time, remember all the Twitter tools that were out there, right? When it first launched, there was, I'm trying to think of all
like
of them.
Hundreds. I mean, there was Seismic, there's TweetDeck, there's Hootsuite, and some of them are still around, obviously. Tweetbot, Tweeter, hundreds.
Yeah, and what happened is, of course, Twitter kind of sped this up, but you saw consolidation, you saw companies just kind of fizzling out, and the ones that actually took traction either got acquired or, like in the case of Hootsuite, is dominating, right? And they're doing a really good job. So, those tools, I think, are doing what they do, and they do it very well. I think what you're going to see is you're going to see interoperability with those tools, and maybe like, Hootsuite has a chatter connection so that you can pull your chatter conversations into it. You're going to see these kind of collaborative and what's the word I'm looking for? They're going to merge together.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much like I don't know what it is, but when you say
convergence.
That's the word. There we go. Convergence media. Yes. But when you mentioned Hootsuite and the chatter comment, it made me think it really does actually. So while email kind of had the kind of one through line through it that it can go back and forth, I think now what we're seeing is that the apps and the APIs are what's creating those bridges between everything. And at some point, when there's enough apps and enough APIs, everything can bridge to everything. You look at things like Ift or Zapier, and it's like, oh, well, I can do pretty much anything now.
Yeah. And the same thing happened with instant messaging, right? If you are on AOL, you can only talk to people with AOL. If you're on Yahoo, you can only talk to people in Yahoo. Or if you're in Gmail, you can only talk to GChat people. And tools like Jabber, or I should say platforms like Jabber and other ones, have created interoperability to where it didn't matter. And I think that's where social media is going to go to. In fact, we're creating our platform as a way to do that, right? With our API, we want to be able to so that anybody could integrate with Advocate, and Advocate could just stay at the employee layer, but not to necessarily go into like the Radiant 6. We're never going to build like this listening station where you can grab everything. I don't think that's in our roadmap at all. These tools out there were created to do really, really good things. And the companies that try to do everything, I think they're the ones that end up getting spread too thin. And just it's like a multi-function printer. Yeah. Yes, it can do everything. None of it can do particularly well, but in a pinch, it all works. And I think what the market is asking for is they want specialties.
Yep.
They want you to be really good at this one thing. We'll block you onto some of this other stuff, but we really want you to be really good, which is why you're seeing like Ift and Zapier taking off, because they're learning how do we bundle these pieces together.
Yeah.
And I think the future really is going to be about that bundling and convergence tools. How do you create windows and services that take the best of each and mash them up and turn them into an amazing product?
Fascinating stuff, man.
Mm-hmm.
All right, man. Well, I want to be sensitive to your time because I know you're building big, great, amazing things, and you have an amazing haircut, and your beard is looking wonderful as well. Before we get out of here, can you do me a favor and can you tell anybody that's listening how they can get in touch with you, how they can learn about you, learn about Advocate, the whole nine? Tell them where to get you.
Yeah, so Advocate is the easiest way to enable and manage and measure employee social sharing across the web. You can get us at advocate.com, ADDVOCATE, or you can catch me on Twitter at Marcus Nelson. So
Kick-ass, man.
All you need, yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure I will see you on Twitter, as I often do, and hopefully, I'm not sure, but I may be going to speak at the Social Media Strategy Summit San Fran, so if you happen to be there, maybe we'll go hang out in San Fran, bro.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, it would be pretty damn cool. So thank you for taking the time out of your day to chat with me about these cool things. I love the fact that I have this podcast where I can talk to people like you and ask you whatever the hell I want, and that's awesome.
It's Good problem to have.
It is a very good thing. So thank you so much for your time, Marcus. Keep on keeping on, bro.
Thank you, Jeff.
Later.
Appreciate it.